Every year, NHL fans, analysts, and sportsbooks try to forecast who will lift the Stanley Cup. However, the playoffs are a reset moment. The top teams are now contending for the cup, and the game, pace, and aggression are all elevated. At the same time, the refs let more slide, so the game is different. Thus, predicting the winner is a blend of art, science, and a generous dose of luck. So, amidst the chaos, how do you predict a winner? The short answer is, there's no perfect way. However, in this video, we'll explore 3 ways you can predict the next Stanley Cup champion. The first is called goals for per game and is based off the average goals for a team scores in the regular season. The second is called the Pythagorean win probability and is based off a formula using goals for, goals against, and a sport-specific exponent. The third is called Bayesian probability and is the more complex of the 3, but we'll break it down for you and show you how you can use it. Each method offers a different approach on forecasting, from raw scoring power to deeper probabilistic reasoning, coupled with more dynamic predictions. And as we'll see, each has its pros and cons. The goals for per game model is a surprisingly good and simple starting point. This is especially the case if you're new to predictive modeling. It's simple because teams that score the most tend to win the most, so goals are the key metric in the model. The more goals you have, the more you will win. You implement the goals for per game model by first gathering each playoff team's average goals from the regular season and ranking the teams in descending order. For example, here are the 2024 to 2025 playoff teams with their average goals for per game for the season, sorted highest to lowest. This is the first input into your baseline model. You then use these stats to create a win probability proportional to the goals for per game for each team. After you have the win probability, you create the matchups and see which team is higher. The team with the highest win probability is predicted as the winner. If you were to have taken this year's playoffs and run the numbers prior to the playoffs beginning, here is what the predicted winners would have looked like. Now that we're done with the first round of the playoffs, we can see how this simple model performs. Inspired by Bill James in baseball, the Pythagorean win percentage, sometimes referred to as Pythagorean win probability, translates goal differential into a projected winning percentage. The PWP model adjusts for both offense, using goals scored, and defense using goals conceded. The PWP calculation incorporates 3 factors. The first is goals for, the second is goals against, the third is a sport-specific exponent. We'll use 2 for hockey. Here you can see the formula for the PWP model. You calculate the PWP for every playoff team based on their regular season numbers, and then you use this as a baseline for that team's true strength rating. For example, below is a snapshot of the total GF and GA for each team in the 2024 to 2025 regular season. You then calculate a win probability for each of the teams, which gives you a second metric that you then use to compare and determine the predicted winner. Here's a view of this year's PWP model, along with the predictions for round 1. Again, now that we're through the first round, here's how the model performed. Using the model, we can further predict who will win the Stanley Cup. As you've seen in this video, the goals for per game and PWP models are point in time. That is, they are based on regular season statistics that are applied to future playoff performance. You can create a rolling win probability if you want based on the latest game, so you factor in a team's most current performance. However, there is also another method called Bayesian probability, which tends to factor in a team's most recent performance with more rigor. The Bayesian probability model allows you to update calculations about a team's predictive strength as new information comes in. You implement a Bayesian probability model by starting with a prior probability. This could be, for example, based on the PWP or the GFPG. And then, after each game, you update the team's probability of winning. The Bayesian probability model then stays current to how a team is performing, but still factors in historical performance. In short, the model adjusts the probability that a team will ultimately win the series after each game. We're going to jump out and show a really cool example of how the Bayesian probability model can be applied to this year's playoffs. In this site, you can see how the analyst has created a fluid and dynamic modeling technique such that the model adjusts after each game. In this edition, we walk through 3 different ways to predict the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. The first was the goals for per game model. The second was the PWP model, and the third was the Bayesian probability model. We would recommend using the goals for per game model for quick surface-level power ranking, the PWP model as a strong season-wide predictive model, and the Bayesian probability model as the best real-time playoff series predictor. And remember that these approaches are not always mutually exclusive.